Hey everyone, welcome to the show. We got Lauren Valencia with us today. Lauren is currently the head of talent over at Socket. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I've been really excited to do this. So appreciate you reaching out.
Hey, we appreciate you too. So Lauren, where are you from?
I am from a little small town about 30 to 45 minutes outside of Seattle proper called Carnation, Washington. It sounds really cliche. I can't think of a better name for a small town. But yeah, grew up kind of in the sticks a little bit. It's beautiful, beautiful place to grow up.
That's awesome. And hey, real quick, I switched over my mic for some reason it wasn't connected. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you
Okay.
good.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. Okay, so yeah, you grew up in a really small town and I think you were one of two, right? You have a sister, is that
Yes,
right?
I have a sister. She's a couple years older than me. So yeah, we you know, really were not friends growing up until she kind of shipped away for college, and now we're best friends. So
Nice. Okay, gotcha. All right. Yeah. You said it was a couple years age difference.
yeah, two and a
Yeah.
half years. She's
Uh,
2.5 years older than me. So yeah, she got me to love hip hop and
yeah.
yeah, TLC and yeah, all the usual suspects.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what were you like as a kid?
Yeah. Oh man. I was really adventurous growing up in the sticks and growing up in a small town. We had a lot of freedom. We grew up on 5 acres, and so a lot of freedom to kind of just go explore in like uncharted, ungroomed, land. Honestly, my dad was a builder. He owned his own business and remodeled and built houses from the ground up. So always had like a lot of lumber laying around. And yeah, me and my sister just we used to like build forts in the woods. And so I spent a lot of time outside, pretty adventurous. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you were also really into the sports, right?
Yes, yeah. Played a lot of sports. Always played team sports. So volleyball was kind of my jam. Played softball, played soccer, wasn't particularly good at either of those. But yeah, volleyball was kind of my sport. I played select. I also played high school, so pretty much year round.
Are you tall? Like
I'm 5'4", so I played libero. So that was kind
nice.
of, my thing. Tried to play hitter. I'm left-handed, so tried to
Hey, me too.
uh, oh my gosh, okay, welcome,
Yeah.
Southpaw. Yep. Maybe the creativity there, they say. But yeah, played a lot of sports. Yeah, volleyball was my thing. I also grew up next to the slopes. So like snowboarding was really consistent through my life. Started really young and now I'm a skier, but yeah, always kind of been on the mountain. Yeah.
Yeah. Which so how old were you when you started snowboarding?
I had to have been in like fifth grade.
Fifth grade. Yeah, I was pretty
Not
young
super,
too.
yeah, not like a baby, but
Oh, baby.
I was doing the ski bus thing and my best friends were, snowboarders and yeah, we have a really like big kind of like ski bum kind of, vibe out here. So
That's awesome. So you were telling me like one time you said you got lost on a mountain while you're snowboarding. How did so
yes,
how did that happen? You just
yes.
went off the trail or
Oh,
the slope somehow accidentally or
it was pretty traumatic.
oh,
So
okay.
I had to have been in like seventh grade and the ski bus situation was you get picked up at the end of the school day and you all take the bus, up, you and 40 other kids up on the mountain. And then, you're up there for about 3 hours and the ski bus comes back and then the parents pick you up, right? I didn't show up to the bus on the way back. And I remember it very vividly. I was with very experienced friends because again, like it's a big kind of like, slope kind of culture, ski culture out there. And they were really good. And I could keep up, but certainly not as experienced. And
Mm.
they took the like faster path down, which was like a black diamond. And I took the like less hard, quote unquote, hard. Ended up not being the case. It was actually an ungroomed slope. And so I was getting stuck in the ice. And I actually thought that my life might end. I remember just screaming for help and nobody's around and there's no lights. And then I see out of nowhere just this guy, like, almost like a scene from Polar Express when he's on top of the train and coming for you. I see this man coming to save my life, and I unstrap out of the, crying, and I, hug him
Oh,
and unstrap, and then get on the back of his skis, and we fly down. And the ski mom who was waiting, she was just sobbing in tears. But yeah,
oh.
they had rescue there, and then I get back on the bus, and all the kids, oh, they're such brats. They're all standing up and clapping.
Very
And I
supportive.
remember, yeah, I
Awesome.
didn't live it down for a while, so.
Yeah. Wow. That must be pretty scary.
It was. Yeah, I actually
Terrifying.
thought no one could hear me because it's snow too, so there's no echo, right?
Is that true? I never thought about that.
Yeah, like
It like
usually
dampens the huh.
it definitely, yeah, it
Never knew
definitely
that.
dampens the sound. At least that's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So then, like, just to fast forward, starting out, like, and kind of finding your path as a young adult, you were telling me about just like kind of finding your footing and what it was like. Tell us about that. Like, what's coming out of high school? Like, what'd you do next?
Yeah, yeah. So I come from a family that like education really mattered. It was always sort of like drilled into my sister and I. You got to go to good school, you got to get good grades. I had sort of this, like I had kind of a love-hate like relationship with education. I wasn't super successful, didn't get the best grades, always felt a little bit out of place in the classroom. Not entirely sure why. Like I had a lot of friends and,
Uh,
kind of grew up in the district and so knew everybody and, certainly had I would say like a good time. But
when you say growing up in the
yeah.
district, what do you mean?
Oh yeah. So like the elementary school that I went to, we all went
Okay.
to middle school together. We all went to high school together.
Okay.
So
Got it.
kind of, saw the same people as we all moved through these different stages of life. But
Sure.
yeah, so didn't go to university right out of school. I started working immediately. Was the first kid in my family to not go to a
Yeah.
university. So there was a lot of, um, I think, worry on my parents' side. What is she going to do? My sister has her like master's from like, this very prestigious school and her CPA. And so, yeah, definitely like was trying to find my way a little bit. Went into the service industry. My best friends today, my, maids of honor, my husband, met them all there, like just amazing people in my life. So, wouldn't do it differently, if I could kind of go back and reset the clock. But learned a lot and, breaking down a bar at 3 a.m. With some coworkers and doing the job basically that like nobody wants to do. So I feel like that was really formative for me. And then, yeah, kind of got into recruiting. I think everyone says this randomly. But yeah, I always knew what recruiting was though. My friend's mom was a recruiter growing up, so I always kind of like knew what it was. But yeah, it took me maybe a little bit later than like some of my classmates because they were all, doing internships and I was just figuring out what I wanted to do next. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Mhm.
Do you think that like not doing a traditional path with education has impacted your value system or your worldview or how you approach your career or think about your role?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially being in recruiting, because you see resumes all day. And I really do have an appreciation. I call them rite of passage jobs. And I think, people go through really impressive journeys with educations, like absolutely. But sometimes I'm looking for that like rite of passage job where they did the job that was like really hard, that like nobody wanted to do. I feel like it really does mold you and kind of pave the way like going forward. Uh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I I don't know. I mean, I only have like my own experience, but I do feel like taking a less traditional path, I had a level of appreciation for those like early jobs. There was just a ton of grunt work that I think maybe other folks didn't quite have, right? Like,
Totally. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think the nice thing was like, I walked away with no student debt.
yeah, well, that's
Um,
also cool. It's always
Yeah,
good.
that's also cool. And honestly, I'm right where I would want to be, like when I would have wanted to been there, have been there. So when I see where I am now, like yeah, I'm actually, thrilled with the journey that I've taken. But it does come with a little bit of like imposter syndrome because, in a world when education, like everybody cared about it, I really had to like prove myself and it constantly came up in interviews and I was almost feeling like apologetic for not,
Hmm.
going, or I had to sort of really sell myself. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, I mean, and also I think probably, I guess we were starting out around the same time, I think, just based on what I could
Mhm.
tell on LinkedIn. I think you might be a little younger than me, but about the same age. And I feel like even a decade ago, it was harder without degrees. Like,
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
was more of a stigma attached to it than, I mean, there are still some roles, some companies where people like really value it. And there is
Mhm.
value. I think in some cases there's a lot of value, but like
Yeah.
it was hard. It's hard
Mhm.
to break into
Mhm. Yeah.
corporate jobs.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
really hard.
it really was.
Yeah.
But the recruiting agency, I just have so much, love for them. I'm still in touch with some of them today. But the first
Yeah.
agency that hired me, they were specifically looking for someone who had worked in the chain of restaurants that I had worked at because you are everything there. Like you are, I think I have it on my LinkedIn that I was chaos control.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my, the title that I gave myself. And I look back on the time there of all the titles I held in that moment. But yeah, it was just such a great place to be because I had, you know, you just when you go through hard things with a group of people really late at night, and that's kind of the world we live in, and you're serving difficult people, people that are tough to work with. Yeah, it's really
It's a
formative.
tough job. Really is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool. And so like now, right? Like you're fast forward, and not too much time, like head of talent at, I mean, I was looking at Socket and because you had talked about like how fast your team is growing, and I was looking
Mhm.
up you guys on LinkedIn, and it's like the employee growth curve is like up and to the right
Oh
pretty
yeah.
significantly. So you're like at a premium head of talent at like a premium tech company that's crushing it. And I saw in your LinkedIn profile, like, was it recently you guys did the 40 million Series B? Is that
We did
or
that back, oh gosh, it would have been right before, like probably 6 months before I joined, actually.
okay?
Yeah, my last company had gotten acquired, so I did the whole, merger thing, and
Okay.
Socket was waiting for me.
Nice.
And yeah, we're having crazy amount of success. I've never been at a startup that had such strong like product market fit and the like complexity of customers, and we 3x'd, headcount in what felt like overnight. And yeah, we're going to double the team in the next 12 months too. So yes, my team
That's
has
really
grown.
cool.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, well, that's really impressive, like how, like how much you've accomplished. And
Thank you.
I think like let's just start with so today, right? Or 2026. Everybody tuning in, other talent acquisition leaders, recruiters trying to level up. Everybody wants to know what everybody else is doing and like how they're approaching this crazy market and this wild and exciting and sometimes stressful like time in the tech industry. It's always stressful, I guess. But how are you approaching like your job today? I mean, what's your kind of obsession this year? What are you focused on?
Hmm. Yeah, I think obviously, every startup probably has a different answer for this at a specific moment in time, but I think we all go through the same things at different times, basically is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, similar things. Right now, I'm really trying to solve for like org design. We're a startup, meaning we're hiring for like the first in type positions. Those are
Yeah,
so hard,
for real.
so hard because you're trying to like stand up entire functions, and AI is changing so much. And so the old playbook that everybody was building, like that's not the playbook anymore. And so
Yeah.
really trying to take like a first principles approach to everything, really trying to figure out like the right path for the team, who the right person is. And yeah, it's really some org design stuff that I'm really like obsessed with right now. And then of course, now that we've hit 100 people, like we need to turn around and we need to look at some of the like people operations side of the house. So it's kind of the full gamut. Like I'm wrapping my arms around everything. We've got some critical hires to make over the next 12 months. And so it's really having very like thorough and thoughtful conversations around right person, right time. Um, yeah.
For those first time roles that you're talking about, like you're right. Interestingly enough, that's not a topic we've really discussed on the show. Like when you're hiring for a role for which is kind of nuts because we've been doing the show for 4 years. We've had like over 200 episodes, but we never really,
Yeah.
really like dialed into, okay, you're scaling, you're hiring a bunch of first time roles. Like, how do you really approach that with the team and ensure that you're getting the right person
Mhm.
in for that for those like first time type of
Yeah.
hires?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with org design, right? So it's, where are we going to be in 12 months from now? What are our customers going to look like? What are our revenue streams? And then you kind of like work back from there. Okay, who do we like really need in this role? So it's pretty heavily like outcomes driven at the top of kind of the conversation. And then of course, like, you want to kind of work back from there and focusing on traits and, what should this person have like done
Mm,
before? And kind of going through like a proper like kickoff, I would say. And so yeah, it's like honestly just kind of like starting at like where do we see ourselves 12 months from now, and then like what are the outcomes that we need this person to accomplish, between now and then. And
sure.
then figuring out kind of like what trade-offs we need to make. But it takes a long time to have these conversations. And when you're trying to like figure it out and things like evolve every 6 months in a startup, like who we are today is not who we were 6 months from now. Like the bar is now even higher. And what we thought was aggressive then is baseline now. And so it's just it feels like a moving target in a sense. And so you really want to, I think, like first and foremost, like when you're hiring that head of or that first in, they have to be scalable with the business. That's like something that I truly believe in. Yeah, finding somebody who is, of course, like you're going to find people that are seed stage. Maybe they're not right for you in Series B, and that can be okay. But I think at this stage, like we're sort of like scaling up, like we do need to find people that can sort of lead us to like where we want to be in 12 months from now.
Yeah, I totally get that. I'm curious if you have any advice on how do you interview and evaluate if somebody's the right type of scale up executive
Mm,
versus like, going from that very early stage pre-scale
yeah.
to like, okay, now we have where things are going to be evolving at a faster rate. Somebody's going to have to know how to leverage themselves,
Mhm,
delegate properly, to hire, to figure out the right point of impact as the role consistently evolves. How
mhm.
do you kind of test for that?
Yeah, it's like battle scars. And
Yeah,
that's like really what I believe is like, do they have the stretch marks? Like, do they have the battle scars? Being able to talk like very specifically about like that journey to the scale of where we're headed and like what broke along the way and like what they would have done differently. Typically what I'm looking for like a very like behavioral based kind of interview style. But I'm also like kind of have this like 80/20 rule, right? Like find 80% of what you're looking for. I do see a lot of value in there being that like kind of 20% where the person's not going to get bored. Like this is
yeah,
mutually fit for us because we're allowing them to kind of grow and stretch and walk through some uncharted territory that they haven't been before. I think when you're kind of like, this is my third bill here. But what was really exciting about it was, I haven't been at as small of a company and have always reported into a head of people. Like we don't have that here. So um, I think it was a role that I could really like stretch and grow into, and I'm having a lot of fun. And so I think that that's something to really consider when you're hiring these folks, is what are they going to learn when they're here.
yeah,
I think that's who you're looking for. Like you're looking for the person who like wants to grow and wants to stretch and like has that level of ambition, not just sort of, oh, I've done this 5 times again, I'm just going to go like build the same playbook. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That okay, that's super helpful. Yeah, I'm a huge advocate of really focusing on behavioral fit. I don't know. I mean, like, I just over the years, it's just I don't think we can compromise on behavioral fit at all. Like,
Yeah.
it's every time I feel like I've taken a chance on that or not felt
Mhm.
solid about it, it just hasn't worked
It
out.
hasn't worked out. Yes, you're
Yeah, like,
so right. I've certainly made, some maybe, as every leader and manager has, like I've certainly taken a bet
all
on
right,
someone. And I do think that there's a time and a place for that. Like I do think that you have to bake some of that like risk in. But they need to like spike. Like they need to be like, good and like very good in like specific areas where you're like, ooh, that's what we're learning from them. But yeah, a
yeah,
culture,
for sure.
obviously, like, you don't want to hire folks that are, going to come kind of weigh the culture down. So there is also some of the like, are people going to like working with this person? Like, yeah.
It's got it. Yeah, got to be that as well for sure. Yeah, it's really really interesting. And so this kind of leads into I think your top takeaways as a talent
Yeah.
acquisition leader. And I think actually, so you shared a few things with me. I would actually like to start with the third thing you shared.
Okay.
You refer to as the deadly metric, time to
Yeah.
align. And the reason I want to start there is because I think like the alignment piece is also so critical when it comes to these first in hires,
Mhm.
right? Like, but so can you talk to me like about why you feel like time to align is so important and just maybe some lessons learned and advice
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm like somebody who I'm constantly like reading things. I'm constantly like listening to podcasts. And I've always had to do that. I've always been a little bit of a lone wolf in terms of like reaching outside and developing my own skill set because, we're kind of been a team for one when I've started at most places. So um, yeah, I actually learned this metric, time to align, from John Blesdelica. He's the head of Recruiting Toolbox. I'm not sure if you've heard from him, so I have to give him credit for this. But it's something that, like, every time I say it, every time I repeat it, everyone goes, what did you just say?" They're like, "What is that metric?" And I'm like, "Exactly." So yeah, time to align. So that is the thing that like is so deadly, the metric that is so incredibly expensive. And it's that moment where you've got a hiring leader, maybe it's executive, maybe it's a hiring manager who they want to kick off a search. But the moment that we actually are ready to kick off that search, which means everybody's aligned on what we're looking for. We have the homework assignment, we have the profile built out, we have a solid process in place. Uh, that is like just drags on for weeks. It just drags on for weeks. And so there is, even though like the rec's not like open, there is also this capacity issue, like with recruiting teams, where that's actually the hardest part of the job. Like I look for people on my team who are excellent like project managers, and they really are like driving to like go live. That's the hardest part. Like getting people in the process is actually like the easiest part
Right.
in my opinion. Yeah. So of course, assuming like you have, the right like total rewards packages and you don't have unrealistic expectations. But yeah, it's that alignment piece. It's getting everybody to agree and sit in a room and say, these are the outcomes that we're looking for over the next 12 months. And here's what's actually really important versus like, what we just like hope and wish to have and what looks shiny on paper. And so, yeah, that especially for the first in positions and like for startups, like that, this is really hard. It's really
Yeah.
hard.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. You also mentioned how you think about picking hires, like you pick relationships and having high standards for folks you allow in your life. Like, can you
Mhm.
tell us that, you mentioned that was actually the first thing you mentioned that came to
Yeah.
mind. It was like top takeaways, but like, yeah, tell
Yeah.
me, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. I don't know if this is the standard kind of growth path that most recruiters go through, but it's certainly been, a learning of mine that became really prevalent over the last couple of years. And yeah, pick your hires like you pick your relationships in life.
Yeah.
And of course, there's going to be some difference, right?
Of course. Yeah,
But
sure. It's a little different.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I
But
get, I see what you're saying, like,
yes.
for sure.
Yeah, you need to be ruthless about the quality of coworkers that you have. Every hire directly shapes what the company becomes. I mean, truly. I don't know where I heard this, but someone that I look up to, I'll have to go back and see, they sort of commented on this and they had said, culture is not defined as who we hire. It's like what we tolerate within the business. And I thought that that was really interesting. And so, um, like of course it's tied to hiring, right? But like yeah, like quality, I think, of like coworkers, just as you would pick your friends and relationships. And most people don't maybe figure that out until their 30s. So I know that that's,
Sure.
a hard
Right.
one. I certainly didn't figure it out until, my late 20s. And yeah, so and we can kind of circle back on that later of like, yeah, kind of my spidey senses on people. But yeah, so every hire will shape what the company becomes. You need to be asking questions like, what are we learning from them? Are they just meeting the status quo, or are they bringing something to the business that like we don't have already? Are they learning more from us than we're learning from them? Right. And
All right.
then stick it out when times get hard. Like I want to know that I have good colleagues that I can rely on who, are gonna be amazing solutioners, if that's a word.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah. And are like thinking for like what's best for the business and low ego and do they challenge us? So I also I have to credit my past boss. She is just amazing. She's a pretty badass VP of people, and I've learned so much from her. And one time she asked me, this might be a little interesting to hear, but it really put things into perspective for me. One time she had said, you know, do you trust this person to make the value of your equity like grow tenfold? And I was like, oh. So
Yeah.
when you start kind of like looking at your hires, like okay, like, you know, what are we learning from them? How are they like helping us raise the bar? And I think like recruiters have to do that. Like we need to endorse the hire. And yes, there's a full interview loop. Like, you know, you can't sort of off one 30-minute screen, no, but like you're there for the debrief, you're seeing the feedback, like you're hearing from the candidate, you're going through kind of the whole nurturing process with the candidate and with the hiring teams. If you can't say at the end of this process that you endorse this person, like you got to have that conversation. It's ultimately up to the hiring manager, right? And like, you know, whoever's kind of in your hiring committee. Um, but yeah, you got to be ruthless.
Okay. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And just like as a general life principle, zooming out, like setting high standards for who's in your life is, I feel like, incredibly important.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, I personally, I guess I'm an entrepreneur, so it's probably a little different, but I do segment different parts of my life, but I do have like principles that definitely carry over, and it's probably a little more blended than maybe for
Mhm.
some folks. But yeah, I mean, like the main thing is like values and standards, like in terms of how we operate as people, and if we don't stand standards for the behavior we'll accept in our life, then other people will for us, right?
Mhm.
Um, and you do have to be kind of ruthless in terms of who you like. I feel like who I choose to associate with in different like capacities, I'm gonna consider acceptable behavior, because I also believe in this principle, like we are who we hang around most
Mhm.
frequently, and we will ultimately be kind of influenced, and some
Yeah.
of us are kind of leaders and we can influence others and help pull them up, but even if you are that leader, the head of talent, it's like we still need to be surrounding ourselves with like folks that are going to help us elevate our game and become like the next best version of ourselves, right? Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
uh,
Absolutely. And that resonates with me so much. I had sort of this personality toxic trait growing up of caring so much what the wrong people thought. And now I care about what the right people think. And you know, so yeah, absolutely. Like I went through this kind of cleansing of my soul period where, you know, you kind of drop relationships in life that like no longer serve you. And there's a kind way to do that, right? And then there's
yeah,
also like sometimes there's never a good way to do that. But that I think happens for most people. It certainly happened for me, which was really hard for me because growing up, I cared a lot about what people think, the wrong people. I really
yeah,
just it just ate me up inside. I don't know why. Yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, judgment can be hard, right? And sometimes the wrong people are the ones who are like judging you, like so. It's like it can be
Yeah.
hard to kind of, I think, manage
Or
that. I do feel like that's critically important. I do think about that in my culture within like both my companies, and I'm a lot more, I think, aware of it in my personal life too.
mhm,
And it's like that balance. Like it's also like who you're gonna invest. Like I've always like believed in relationships. Like okay, if somebody gives me their 110%, I'm gonna give them my 110%. But
mhm.
we also have to, yeah, just be cautious about like okay, who are we gonna make those investments in? You know.
Yeah,
So it's
definitely.
a big one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
One thing you said that like really resonated with me, that I, maybe because I am a founder, I love this, but you said recruiters need to think like founders. Like, and I think
Yes.
this touched on like the equity piece, like that you mentioned, like, okay, Matt said this person has an impact on the equity. That's really cool. How do you like articulate that to your recruiters and get them in that mind state?
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple of like this kind of is, you know, shows up in a couple of different ways. One is, you know, obviously like when you're engaging with founders. My last two CEOs, the current
Yeah.
founder CEO, as well as the last, both just incredibly smart. And I really worked on this myself of like when I'm bringing them something, like thinking very carefully, like holistically, how and sort of like horizontally, how is this person thinking? And is my sort of like, you know, solution or sort of answer that I'm bringing them, is it helpful or is it hurtful?
Right.
And thinking very horizontally about like what are all the little bits and bobs that like they could be thinking, and that's going to take some time, right? Like you need to know your founder. at the same time. So like, yes, think like a founder, but like, also think like your founder.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's, that's your partner, that's your stakeholder. But yeah, like I think at the end of the day, it's, you're accountable too, not just the hiring manager. You really need to like own your business.
Yeah.
And I think this also depends on the culture of the organization and how they view recruiting. So one of the number one questions that I sort of try to get answered, questions that I have within any interview process that I go to is like, what is the culture around recruiting today? How bought in is everybody? Am I, dragging people across the finish line, just to make some hires? And it can be hard to like figure out in the interview process. But yeah, you really want to like own your business, and if you can, and if an organization enables you to do that, likely means that they have like hopefully a good culture around recruiting. So I also want to just be sensitive that like I actually have realized that not, every company views recruiting in the same way. Like sometimes we're viewed as like a strictly a cost center, but we have a direct bottom line to like revenue and
Oh, oh,
to
yeah.
to roadmap and like to the
Sure.
success of our customers, right? So yeah, you really got to just strengthen your business acumen every single day.
I always say like I like to think about like what we do as an investment manager because we are literally managing the largest investment a company will ever make, which is payroll.
Yeah.
And so it's like, like in your case, like you're managing an 8-figure annual investment. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
you have the ability to impact the ROI of that and like how do you turn that into a 9-figure valuation or whatever, you
Hmm.
guys might already be there. I don't know, but like you know what I mean? It's like how do you do
Totally.
that? So it's
Yeah. You have
that's
to
how you have
fight
to
for
that's
the
the level you
business.
have to play at.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And part of this like founder mentality is like you have to fight for the business. And like what that means is, obviously like you're strengthening your business acumen, you're endorsing every hire, you're having hard conversations and difficult conversations, and you're the truth teller in the room. Like
Yeah.
that is so hard to be is the truth teller, especially when I think, again, it goes back to kind of culture around recruiting. If you sort of got this like recruiters are order takers, such a missed opportunity because what you're missing is the person who has so much intel. Like we hold secrets in our hair.
Yeah.
And it's a missed opportunity, like huge. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. That is something that I also obsess on any hire I make is like their business strategy. I don't care what role they're in. I don't. Like it could be junior, like 22.
Mhm.
I don't care.
Mhm.
Like business strategic acumen, their ability to understand their own point of impact within the organization, how their role correlates to like the company's outcomes that the North
Right.
Star that company wants to achieve. Like I have an expectation that we could have an intelligent back and forth conversation about business and about their
Mhm.
impact and how it's driving outcomes. And I expect smart questions from them speaking to that. And I look for folks that don't see their job as the JD, but see their job as
Mhm.
the outcome that needs to be produced and a willingness to do whatever it takes. The type of people who say things like "call me the janitor," I don't care, like
Right.
whatever is going to get us to that next level. Those are the people that like I find most valuable and successful in
Yeah.
startup and scale up environments too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100% agree with that. It's yeah, finding somebody that knows how to like flex up but can also flex down
Sure,
and
yeah,
kind of and across too, right? So yeah, I love that one.
yeah,
Think like a founder.
I love it. Yeah, that's a good one. Maybe that's even something we put in the title or the
Love
description.
it. Love it.
So,
Yeah. I
yeah,
yeah, I'm like equally bullish on both of those. Like pick your recruiters, like your relationships, and then like think like a founder. I'm like, I don't know if you can pick one.
yeah, they're just both are like critically important. I feel like when you think like a founder, you pick you do the pick your hires like your relationships, right?
Yes, yes,
Um,
exactly,
and
exactly.
time to align is awesome. I love thinking about it that way. Um, well, so like, look, chapter 4,
Okay,
kind of fast
okay,
forwarding
let's
into
go.
into the future. Um, yeah, so just being silly, but yeah, so like when you think about your career moving forward,
Mhm.
like who do you want to become? Like, what do you want to learn? What are you focused on in terms of like developing over the next few years?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Great question. I have some more specific things. Like I mentioned earlier, like I really want to deepen my engineering fluency. I think that that's a critical building block to, not only as head of talent, but like, if I am reaching for a head of people role. Um, and I'm having a lot of fun building. Like I want to keep building. I feel like I have a couple left in me.
Nice.
Yeah, and so yeah, I'm just gonna keep reaching up, whatever that comes with. But more specifically, yeah, like skill set wise, like engineering fluency, AI fluency. Um, oh, I want to learn the fundraising process. I want to like I have like a really I think solid, not to toot my own horn, which I did like learn from my last boss. I have a really solid like close, like candidate close. Like I'm talking about how I'm talking about equity and like projections of like exit valuations and how we're sort of like building value over time and how we're doing that thoughtfully and and not getting obsessed with like an exit date. And so I have a really solid close, but I think what I'm missing a little bit is just the behind the curtain of like what actually happens during the fundraising process. I think that will really strengthen my close, particularly with, as we sort of build out C-suite, right?
Yeah.
So that's more granularly, like, yeah, engineering fluency and AI fluency, the fundraising process. And I think that will really help me like connect some dots. I think that goes back to like the business acumen and like being a partner to the business. So at the end of the day, like that's, yeah, I really want to do, I just want to get better. I just want to
Yeah.
get better. I
I love
also,
it.
yeah, and then, of course, like that I think goes to like the why. And, I want to build a life with options.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think again, like this is like, kind of getting back to what you're saying, like thinking like a founder and really taking ownership of like learning about different parts of the business. Like you talk about like AI fluency, that's obviously huge right now,
Mhm.
but also really understanding the fundraising motion, like given the type of company you're working in, like you want to understand how are the investors thinking about the business?
Yes.
How are the owners, the executives, the other executives on your team, how are they thinking
Mhm.
about the business? Like that's how you drive results. Like,
Yeah.
um,
I just want to be
that's
the
huge.
best partner that I can possibly be to like my peers on the leadership team. And of course, like, I want to be a great resource for employees and I want my team to like feel empowered and that I'm always fighting for them. And so, yeah, I just want to get like better across the board.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. So you talked to me a lot like about in the prep part of our like before we recorded, and you just briefly mentioned it too, like having options and
Mm,
keeping options open. So, why is that so important to you, and how do you think about doing that?
yeah. I think that this is deeply rooted from feeling like I didn't have options at one point. And I grew up in, like I said, a loving household where, had, went on a lot of road trips in Disneyland and Hawaii and certainly like didn't go without is what I'm trying to say. But also was taught that like you need to work for your keep. And so when I sort of popped out of high school and oh, what am I going to do with my life? And like, wasn't really interested in school. Going back to school, I don't ever want to feel like that again. And so I have this, it's almost like my like toxic trait of using that as my fuel of, I just always want to have options.
Sure.
So I know, I don't know if that's a lame answer, but
No,
um,
it's like it doesn't have to be overly complex. Like it's like you want to, yeah, like that makes a lot of sense. I think it
yeah.
is correlated to what you said, like in terms of kind of earning your keep and just staying in a place where it's like, okay, what's the value I'm adding today? What's the value I'm adding tomorrow? Am I adding value in the right way that's really valuable not only to my company but to like the marketplace? And are there other kind of adjacent skill sets I can develop? Um, yeah, I think to some extent you're like thinking like a founder. This is also correlated to that,
Yeah.
because it's like you're almost like you see yourself as a business and
Mhm.
that concept of like potentially having multiple revenue streams or at least the ability to have multiple revenue streams or even within a company to transition roles like okay go from just TA focus to now like head of like overseeing like people and like implementing
Mhm.
HRIS and like these different things that you're doing it's like you're expanding like
Yeah.
you're the value that you're producing and that does give you more options right
Yeah. I want to be able to lend myself to just various areas of the business. And I think
yeah
that in a lot of ways that's the definition of an executive. Can you
yeah for
contribute
sure
to lanes outside of your own? I'm pretty sure
yeah
that that's, the haven't gotten there yet. But yeah, yeah, I think absolutely like founder related. And I want to just be a really good, yeah, business partner. So,
I love it. That's awesome. So hey, let's like zoom out a little bit. So we talked about professionally, but I am curious, what do you have any thoughts on like what the next best version of yourself looks like holistically as a person? Like
ooh.
who do you want to become, like holistically?
Mm. Yeah, so I read this book recently, a snippet from a book. I don't usually read like books on like work life, kind of like
Right.
a thriller junkie crime, like fiction
Nice.
junkie. I'm also reading Spanish books right now. I'm a Spanish learner. But I read this book about this gal who her identity was work. And when something happened with work, her total sense of being and sense of belonging was entirely just like disrupted. Like she went through a
Yeah.
lot of it. And I'm like, ooh, can't do that. So, and I kind of went through that a little bit with the last acquisition. Like I was so bought into Airbase and I was having so much fun. I'd been there for years. I was like reaching for new things and, really loved the people that I worked with and the team that I built. And then once I found out we were getting acquired, I had this like really long sort of like lead time, which is absolutely like the favored option. But it sort of like put this big ripple in my pond. And all of a sudden I was like, who am I? Insert Zoolander.
Yeah.
And so I just would like to find sort of like my identity outside of work a little bit. But I think that can be really hard to do because it's almost like you don't want to change anything because being so like a bought in always has like kind of gotten you to where you are today. And so I
Right.
I want to find that skill to do both. I want to find a skill to do both without sacrificing one or the other. So I'm not sure if that's
Yeah.
possible. Maybe it's not possible.
I think it is. I think it is. I think that there's
Okay.
this like myth because sometimes people look at some entrepreneurs that are like very like unbalanced and they're totally wrapped in like just their career, and there's nothing wrong with just being obsessively focused on anything, frankly, as long
Mhm,
as it's like
mhm.
morally fine, right? Like
Right.
fine. It's just it's not the only path. Like you can be really good in our careers and we could be really good to our families. It's not mutually exclusive. I
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's hard. I think it's really hard to do like to maintain, put family first, put your health first, and put your career first. And it's like because those are the big ones for me. It's like how do I do? And it's a constant, and I even know like my team, my employees, my family, everyone, my customers, they all see that like they see uh, like we're all working, so we're in a similar place, but I know they see that from me
yeah,
too because it's like it's just boom 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 boom, like going from thing to thing to thing to try to manage, and it never gets easy. I think what's got maybe a little easier is like managing it emotionally, like just like
yeah.
being accepting, like it's never a perfect balance. It's like
Mhm,
it's
mhm,
just you just do the best you can and you try to
mhm.
make judgment calls every day on what's most important. And sometimes it's okay, I got to show up for my daughter today, and it's just
Yeah,
not going to happen at work. And other times it's like, all right, I got to work till 8 p.m. today, or it's like, look, I'm working my tail off, but I haven't been to the gym and now I'm like gaining
yeah.
weight. So like get back in the,
That's
you know what I mean?
that's where I'm at right
Yeah.
now. Like my sciatica is acting up.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like more Pilates, more Spanish. I'm, been taking Spanish for about a year and a half on the side, and it's really hard to do. I have this newfound respect for people who go to work full time and get schooling done, and I'm
Right.
on a way toned down version of that. So yeah, I want to be bilingual, important to me. And then yeah, I think in general, maybe this is a little bit more like work related, but I have a really hard time feeling like a strong connection to the idea that like I earned this seat and that I didn't wind up
Mm.
here by luck. And I
Wait,
don't
you
know
feel
why.
you feel like you got here by luck?
At times, it's hard to sort
Really?
of like, yeah, like there was sort of this one point in time around the time where I turned like 30. I'm 35 now.
Oh,
And I thought, I just like, how did I get here? I just sort of feel like I almost like blacked out in the last like, 10 years of like building. And it was, and so yeah, maybe want to do some work there around like, why can I commend and admire so many people who have earned the same seat that I have, and I can't do that for myself.
So this is interesting. I actually thought you were in your upper 20s, but so you're 35.
Thank you.
And so that means so in 2016 you were head of talent acquisition at Dreambox Learning. So you were head of talent at like your mid upper 20s, like at 26 or something.
Yes.
So you
Yeah.
like
I
rose
built function here.
really fast. I mean, that's incredibly impressive, and particularly with a non-traditional
Yeah.
background and how hard it is. Particularly again, like at our age, like it was. I think it's viewed a little different in education. I mean, still there's some biases there, but I mean, it was hard. And not only did you're working in the service industry, which can be really hard to break out of.
Yeah.
And then you get into recruiting, and then like in just a handful of years, you're head of TA. Like
Mhm.
that's insanely impressive. Like I mean, you really like worked hard for this. I mean, you got there and you got there so fast too, which is like
Yeah.
super impressive.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely, I've certainly seen people that had more of an aggressive growth path than I have. There's, a couple people that I really admire, but yeah, I also think that there's, you got to kind of like get the building blocks in. And it is weird that I don't feel like I've earned at times, I don't feel like I've earned the seat. I'm starting to kind of turn a corner a little bit and feel like, okay, yeah, that's how I got here. Or yeah, I did do all this stuff. But I don't know. I don't know. I think a lot of people maybe I don't like to use the word imposter syndrome because I feel like, everybody kind of has it, but I'm not sure if that's what it is, but it almost feels like I sort of like woke up out of a coma and then and
Yeah.
then I'm here. And I think it actually has a lot to do with sort of the education piece. It has a lot to do with um, never feeling really successful in the place that I was spending the majority of my time. Obviously, like found my way and very like proud of being able to do that. But there's still a little bit of a gap there. There's still a little bit of
Yeah.
a blind spot of like, how did I get here?
Yeah, no, I think it's very normal, and I've spoken with. I mean, I'm sure if you as folks who've listened to several episodes, like this is something that comes up a fair amount, and I think it's something everybody experiences. Like I've certainly experienced it at times, and it's gotten easier as I've gotten a little older.
Mhm.
And I don't know why it would be like it just seems like it's like when like logically you're like there's no why would I
Yeah.
even feel this way. But there's
Yeah.
like the emotional or it's like just
Mhm.
sometimes like overcoming past wiring is just it takes time, I guess. But I don't know, like for folks that are like so many people go through this, right?
Mhm.
Particularly folks that are kind of around our area of their career where maybe they're taking their first head of talent role or like they're moving up into the executive ranks for the first time, and it's like it could be a little scary. It's out of their comfort zone. Like, do you have any advice for them on how to like
Ooh,
overcome these feelings?
yeah. I didn't get to this point until I got to my 30s, but like you have to be okay with not having all the answers. Like you just have to be okay with it. And I finally got to this point where, I always beat myself up about like specific like meetings, like even if there's parts of it that went amazing. I'm always thinking about the things that like, oh, I wish I would have done this differently. And then I sort of like
Yeah.
ruminate on it for like 24 hours and I'm on to the next thing. And so you really have to be like just comfortable with the fact that it's a process and you like just you'll sort of compound your knowledge and compound your experience and eventually you'll sort of master this thing and then you're on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So you have to be okay with not having all the answers and failing. You have to be okay with like failing. And I finally got to the point where I've sort of had meetings and I get off and I go, ooh, that wasn't my best work.
It's really helped
Yeah.
me, and I've talked about it so much. Like for people tuning in, they're probably like, "Oh, really again, man?" But we had a guest on the show a while back, maybe a few months ago, Joe Wilson, and he was the COO for Microsoft in Europe. So
Oh,
he basically ran a small country.
yeah.
Um, and so, but he had this like he told me this thing, and I don't know why. For me, this like resonated deeply, and it's been like an actual game changer in my quality of life at work and how I approach my job, and I think it's making me more successful. Um, but he told me it's like he told me this concept of like moving from a hero to a builder mindset.
Mm,
And I don't know, it's like maybe growing up as an athlete or what, but it's like this the idea of like a healer mindset is like or a hero mindset is like you have to score the game-winning goal, right? It's like everything is super intense. Every meeting, it's like you gotta execute at the highest level. And he says like the reason it just doesn't work in business is because it's like you have 10 meetings every day and you have it like, like for a whole week. It's not just a moment, it's extended to 40, 50, 60, however many hours you're working. And so when you're operating at that level of pressure nonstop for months on end, you don't do your best work. And
yeah.
he was talking about like when he, one company he was scaling, a VC pulled him aside because after a board meeting, like he was like, look, man, like we think you're the right guy for the job, but not how you're operating today. Because again, he was kind of in this hero, like constantly feeling like he
Mhm.
had to knock it out of the park. And he said like moving to a builder mindset. And it's like just building a little bit every day. It's you
That's so interesting.
yeah, like don't
Yeah.
try to knock it out of the park. Like stop trying to hit. I mean, like just opposed to trying to knock it out of the park once, figure out like how do we build a process so we could do this consistently. Like
Mhm.
just think about building a little bit every day. You don't have to crush it every second. Just build, just keep building, trying to get better. And like
Mhm.
that psychological shift for me was like it felt like it alleviated so much pressure. Like even like getting on like customer calls or like, now I'm getting into some investor calls with one of my startups and it's like, all right, like, hey, look, we're doing something valuable. I'm just gonna show up and kind of do what I do. And there's very few moments in life where it comes down to like one moment, right? Like there's
Yes.
usually hundreds of moments that lead to success. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
just thought that was super helpful. And it's kind of adjacent to like what we're talking about with,
Yeah.
performance-based anxiety, that kind of stuff.
Yes, exactly. I also read someone, and gosh, I can't remember who. Like I said, I read a lot of sort of other things that people are posting and talking about and trying to learn from them. And she had talked about how she had worked her whole life to get to the executive team. And she finally got there, and she was so disappointed because everybody was like her. And she was like, had put all this sort of like angst into like, oh, when I get there, when I get there, when I become one of these, people, and she gets there and she's was so disappointed that she had spent so many years kind of putting this on a pedestal and then they're exactly like her, you know?
Right. Yeah, she
Yeah.
still doesn't have the answers to the universe.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, for real. It's that's definitely true. It's like yeah, I feel like sometimes when you're kind of like at our stage, it's like it just takes time to like learn how to be comfortable in your own skin. It's like we're learning our skill sets, but we're also learning how to just have that level of like self-acceptance and just
Yeah,
comfort
yeah,
and like being comfortable being uncomfortable. Like
yeah.
if that makes sense.
Totally. Just be yourself. Be yourself.
Yeah, you do. Like that's sort of like everybody says that, but like I think if someone comes, I mean, you got to be polished in business. Like you got to know
Yeah.
how to show up and like, but yeah, if you put on too much of a facade, like people can't trust you. Like they don't know
Mhm.
what
You're
like,
not relatable.
yeah, if you're trying to be too perfect, it's like, and even
Yeah.
if like you sell it, like it's still going to create a layer of separation where people are going to maybe they'll like, oh wow, I'd love to be that person, but you're not going to connect.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
that took me some time to learn too, is like just to kind of like dial it back, like just be
Yeah.
transparent and it's okay
Relax.
to not know stuff.
Relax.
Yeah, like it's okay to not know stuff. I don't know. I think as you get older, so you realize like how much we don't know. Like we're just
Yeah.
like constantly just in my early 20s I thought I knew like everything and now like the older I get I'm like I know like I just actually I don't know like most of
Been
the things I
humbled.
thought I did.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
well Lauren, hey, this has been a lot of fun. It's been really just nice getting to know you and I am very appreciative of your willingness to kind of come on the show and share your insights and experience and a little bit about yourself with our audience.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure. And yeah, a little different talking about myself and my path and almost therapeutic. So thank you.
Cool.
Thank you
That's
so
awesome.
much.
Yeah, I had a really nice time. So and hey, everybody tuning in, thank you for joining us and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.